The council chamber floated in the darkness of space. It was a massive station made of white crystal and cold metal. Inside, 12 beings sat around a curved table. They were the rulers of 600 worlds. They called themselves the Galactic Unity Council. High Arbiter Vaughn stood at the center. His body was made of living crystal, and light moved through him like blood. He was old, very old. He had seen empires rise and fall. But today, he was talking about a small blue planet called Earth. The humans have been studied, Vaughn said. His voice sounded like glass scraping stone. We know they're soldiers. We know their weapons. We know they're enhanced warriors. These are the threats. These are the ones we must watch. A screen behind him showed images of human soldiers. Men and women in armor. Fighters with guns. Special forces trained to kill. The council looked at these images and nodded. They understood soldiers. Every species had them. But most humans are not soldiers, Vaughn continued. 99% of them are what they call regulars, farmers, teachers, workers. They pose no threat. They will comply. The council agreed. The decision was made. Earth would be occupied. Not conquered with fire and death, but slowly controlled. The humans would work for the unity. They would feed the empire. It would be simple. Far away, on the planet Earth, a man named Jinho woke up before the sun. He was 38 years old. His hands were rough from years of working in rice fields. His back was strong. His eyes were tired but calm. Jinho walked outside his small house and looked at his land. The fields stretched out in neat rows, filled with water that reflected the pink morning sky. He had worked this land since he was a boy, first with his father, then alone. Now he worked it for his daughter. Soman was 12 years old. She was still sleeping inside. Her mother had died 3 years ago from sickness. Since then, it had been just the two of them. Jinho made her breakfast every morning, walked her to school, and worked until dark. This was his life. Simple and hard. He did not know that ships were coming. In the village nearby, a woman named Yuna was already awake. She was 29 and taught at the middle school. She had dark circles under her eyes because she had stayed up late grading papers. She drank her 3rd cup of coffee and looked at her lesson plans. Yuna loved teaching. She loved watching children learn and grow. She was strict but kind. The students respected her. Some even feared her a little because she never forgot when homework was late. She did not know that her school would soon be closed. Old Taiho sat on his porch, watching the sunrise. He was 67 years old. His hands were covered with scars from 40 years of factory work. He had operated machines, fixed broken engines, and solved problems that engineers could not solve. Now he was retired, but he could not stop working. He spent his days fixing things for neighbors. Broken radios, old tractors, anything that needed repair. Taiho had seen many things in his life. War, poverty, change. He had survived it all by being patient and observant. He watched. He waited. He remembered. He did not know that he would need these skills again. Hannah ran through the village streets as the sun came up. She was 24 years old and worked at the convenience store. But every morning, before her shift, she ran. 10 kilometers, 20, sometimes 30. Her legs burned and her lungs screamed, but she did not stop. Running was freedom. Running was life. People in the village thought she was strange. Why run so far? Why push so hard? Hannah never explained. She just smiled and kept running. She did not know that running would save lives. The ships came 3 days later. They appeared in the sky like dark clouds. Massive vessels that blocked the sun. The village shook as they landed in the fields outside town. Jinho watched from his doorway, holding Soman close. Yuna gathered her students and kept them calm. Taiho stood on his porch and counted the ships. 14. The aliens called themselves Valori. They were tall and thin, with bodies like insects. Their skin was hard and black, and their eyes glowed yellow in the dim light. They moved with quick, sharp motions, like machines. Commander Keth led them. He was the largest of the Valori, and his voice was cold and flat. He stood in the village square and announced that Earth now belonged to the Galactic Unity. Humans would work. Humans would obey. Resistance was pointless. The villagers listened in silence. They did not fight. They did not run. They just watched with quiet eyes. Keth was pleased. These humans were weak, broken already. This assignment would be easy. On the first day, a Valori soldier walked through the village inspecting homes. He came to Jinho's house and saw Somin standing in the doorway. The girl did not bow. She was too scared to move. The soldier struck her across the face. Somin fell to the ground, crying. Jinho ran to her and held her. He looked up at the soldier. His face showed no anger, no fear, nothing, but his eyes memorized every detail of the soldier's face. The shape of his head, the pattern on his armor, the way he walked. Jinho said nothing. He just held his daughter and watched the soldier leave. Commander Keth wrote his first report that night. Occupation successful. Human regulars show no resistance. Threat level 0. Recommend minimal forces for continued control. He sent the report to the council and went to sleep. Satisfied, he did not see Jinho sitting alone in the dark, staring at the wall. Remembering, he did not see Yuna writing names in a small notebook, keeping track of every soldier and where they patrolled. He did not see Taiho walking through the fields, studying the alien ships, noting where the panels were weak. He did not see Hannah stretching her legs, ready to run farther than she had ever run before. The Valori saw only what they expected to see. Weak humans, broken spirits, easy control. They did not understand that patience is not weakness, that silence is not surrender, that the quietest people are often the most dangerous. The occupation had begun, but so had something else. Something the council would never see coming. The regulars were watching, and they were remembering. 2 weeks passed. The Valori established their control over the village. They set up a command post in the old community center. They created rules. Humans must wake at dawn. Humans must work until dark. Humans must give 70% of their harvest to the Unity. Commander Keth watched from his window as the humans obeyed. They went to the fields. They worked. They came home. They slept. Everything was orderly. Everything was calm. He sent daily reports to the council, and each one said the same thing. Situation stable. Humans compliant. No issues. But Keth was starting to notice things he did not understand. The first strange thing was Jinho. Keth watched the farmer work from sunrise to long past sunset. 18 hours. Sometimes 20. The man did not stop for rest. He did not complain. He just worked, his body moving through the fields like a machine. Keth called the village doctor, a quiet man named Minho, to explain. How does he do this? Keth demanded. My soldiers need 12 hours of sleep every cycle. This human works for 20 hours. Is he enhanced? Modified? Minho shook his head. No, he is just a farmer. That is impossible. No living thing can function this way. Minho thought for a moment. Then he said, it is planting season. If he does not plant now, there will be no harvest. No food for winter. He has done this his whole life. His father did it. His grandfather did it. Keth stared at the doctor. You are saying this is normal? For us, yes. Keth did not believe him. He ordered his medical team to scan Jinho for drugs or implants. They found nothing. The man was simply human, and he worked 20 hours a day, because he had always worked 20 hours a day. This disturbed Kath, but he did not know why. The second strange thing was why the Valori had closed the schools. Children were not needed for education. They were needed for small tasks around the village. But Kath's patrols reported that children still gathered in basements and empty buildings. They sat in circles and listened to a woman talk. Una was teaching in secret. Kath sent soldiers to stop her. They found her in an old storage room with 15 children. She was teaching them history, stories of their ancestors, wars their people had survived, hard times they had overcome. The soldiers told her to stop. She bowed politely and said she understood. The next day, she was teaching again in a different location. Kath was confused. Why does she continue? She gains nothing. We have closed her school. She receives no payment. His advisor had no answer. Kath called Una to the command post. She stood before him, small and tired, dark circles under her eyes. Why do you teach? He asked. Because children must learn, she said. We have forbidden it. Yes, yet you continue. Una was silent for a moment. Then she said, my grandmother taught during the war, when teaching was forbidden. My mother taught during the occupation, when teaching was forbidden. I teach now. It is what we do. Kath studied her face. She was not defiant. She was not angry. She simply stated facts, as if they were obvious. As if teaching was like breathing, something she could not stop even if she wanted to. He let her go. He did not know what else to do with her. The third strange thing was Hannah. Kath's patrol units reported seeing a young woman running through the hills every morning. At first, they ignored her. Then they started tracking her distance. 10 kilometers, 20, 30. This cannot be accurate, Kath said, looking at the data. No creature runs this far without purpose. Is she carrying messages? Meeting resistance fighters? His soldiers followed her for 3 days. She was not meeting anyone. She was not carrying anything. She was just running. Kath called her in for questioning. Why do you run? He asked. Hannah shrugged. I like running. 30 kilometers every day? Sometimes 40. Kath stared at her. His species could not run more than 2 kilometers without collapsing. Their bodies were not designed for endurance. They hunted in short bursts, then rested. You run 40 kilometers for pleasure? He asked. Hannah smiled. Yes, it clears my head. Kath dismissed her. But later, he looked up human biology in the Unity database. What he found made him uncomfortable. Humans were persistence predators. Long ago, before technology, they hunted by chasing animals for hours, sometimes days, until the prey collapsed from exhaustion. Their bodies were designed to keep moving when other creatures stopped. They did not overheat like other species. They could regulate their temperature through sweat. They could run forever. Kath closed the file and did not read more. The fourth strange thing was Taiho. The Valori vehicles kept breaking down. Engines failed. Navigation systems crashed. Communication arrays stopped working. Kath blamed his engineers and demanded repairs. But the repairs took too long. Parts were missing. Replacements did not fit. Then someone mentioned the old human who could fix things. Kath found Taiho sitting on his porch, drinking tea. The old man's hands were rough and scarred. His eyes were sharp. You can repair machines? Kath asked. Some machines, Taiho said. Kath brought him to a broken vehicle. The Valori engineers had worked on it for 2 days without success. Taiho looked at it for 5 minutes. Then he asked for some wire, a piece of metal, and tape. He fixed it in 20 minutes. Kath was amazed. How did you do that? Taiho shrugged. I looked at it. I saw what was broken. I fixed it. But our engineers could not understand the problem. They think too much, Taiho said. I just see. After that, Kath ordered Taiho to help with all repairs. The old man agreed politely. He fixed everything the Valori brought him. He also memorized every wire, every panel, every weak point in their technology. But Keth did not know that. Then the patrol disappeared. 5 Valori soldiers went into the mountains for a routine survey. They did not return. Search teams found their bodies at the bottom of a ravine. Their equipment was undamaged. There were no signs of attack. The official report said it was an accident. The terrain was unfamiliar. The rocks were loose. They fell. Keth accepted this explanation. What else could it be? There was no resistance. The humans were compliant. It was simply bad luck. But that night, Taiho sat on his porch and looked at the mountains. He knew those trails. He had hunted there for 50 years. He knew where the rocks were loose. He knew where the ground would give way if you stepped wrong. He had mentioned those trails to a young man in the village. The young man had mentioned them to the soldiers when they asked for directions. Taiho sipped his tea and said nothing. Commander Keth finished his weekly report. Minor incident in mountains. Accidental deaths. Situation remained stable. Humans continue to show no resistance. Recommend maintaining current force levels. He sent the report and felt satisfied. Everything was under control. He did not see Yuna passing notes to her students, building a network of whispers. He did not see Hannah mapping every trail in the mountains, every path too narrow for vehicles. He did not see Minho quietly collecting medicine, hiding supplies. He did not see Jinho watching the soldier who had struck his daughter, learning his schedule, his habits, his weaknesses. The Valori saw peaceful villagers doing peaceful work. They saw no weapons, no anger, no resistance. They did not understand that the resistance had already begun. It was slow. It was patient. It was invisible. And it was everywhere. 1 month into the occupation, Commander Keth decided to break the humans completely. Food was the weapon. He increased the harvest quota from 70% to 90%. The humans would keep almost nothing for themselves. They would starve slowly. They would become weak. They would beg for mercy. This was standard procedure. The Unity had used it on dozens of worlds. Hungry populations did not resist. They focused only on survival. Keth announced the new quota in the village square. He expected fear. He expected despair. He expected people to fall to their knees. Instead, the villagers listened in silence. Then they nodded and walked away to continue their work. Keth waited for them to break. Days passed. Weeks passed. They did not break. Jinho lost 15 kilograms. His clothes hung loose on his body. His face became thin. But every morning, he was in the fields at sunrise, working the same hours, moving at the same pace. Keth called Minho again. Explain this. Your people are starving. Why do they not slow down? Minho was thin too. Everyone was thin. But his voice was steady. Our bodies are eating themselves to survive. Our muscles burn fat first, then other tissue. We become smaller, but we keep moving. For how long? Weeks, months, as long as we must. Keth shook his head. This is not possible. My soldiers cannot function at reduced calories. Their performance drops immediately. Minho almost smiled. We are different. Our ancestors survived famines, ice ages, wars. Our bodies remember. They know how to live on nothing. Keth demanded more tests. The results confused him further. Human metabolism could shift into different modes. When food was scarce, their bodies became efficient. They burned less energy. They preserved vital functions. They kept going. His own species had no such ability. Without proper nutrition, Valori soldiers became weak within days, useless within weeks. But these humans just kept working, kept watching, kept waiting. The villagers ate what little they had left. roots from the forest, wild plants from the mountains, small fish from the streams. They shared everything. No one hoarded. No one stole. When one family had nothing, another family gave them something. Yuna organized the sharing. She knew every family in the village. She knew who had extra rice, who had vegetables, who had nothing. She moved food around like pieces on a game board, making sure everyone survived. She also kept teaching. The secret lessons continued. But now she taught something new. She taught the children how to remember. In the old days, before writing, humans passed knowledge through stories. Fathers told sons. Mothers told daughters. The stories were memorized word for word, passed down through generations. Yuna taught the children this ancient skill. Every child in the village became a living book. They memorized names, patrol schedules, supply routes, soldier positions. They played games in the streets, and the games were codes. Rock, paper, scissors meant a patrol was coming from the north. Hopscotch meant supplies were being moved. The Valori saw children playing. They saw nothing else. Hana's runs became longer. She mapped every trail in the province, every mountain path, every river crossing, every hidden cave. She shared these maps with Yuna, who made the children memorize them. Taiho continued fixing Valori equipment. He was good at it. Too good. The Valori came to depend on him. They showed him their machines willingly. They explained how things worked because he asked helpful questions. Taiho learned everything. And he remembered everything. Then the execution happened. A farmer named Doan was caught hiding grain. He was 52 years old. He had worked his fields for 30 years. He was saving seeds for next year's planting, as farmers had always done. The Valori did not understand this. They called it hoarding. They called it theft. Commander Kath decided to make an example. The village was gathered in the square. Soldiers forced everyone to watch. Dohan was brought out in chains. He was thin and tired, but his eyes were calm. Kath read the charges. Hoarding food. Defying the unity. The punishment was death. Dohan did not beg. He did not cry. He looked at his neighbors, his friends, the children he had watched grow up. He nodded once as if saying goodbye. The soldier fired. Doan fell. He did not get up. Kath watched the crowd carefully. He expected weeping, screaming, fear. This was how it worked on other worlds. Public executions created terror. Terror created obedience. The villagers did not weep. They did not scream. They stood in silence, and every single one of them looked directly at Commander Kath. Their eyes held no anger, no fear, something else. Something Kath had never seen before. Patience. It was the look of people who could wait, who had always waited, who knew that time was their weapon. The look said, "We have seen worse than you. We have survived worse than you. We will outlast you." Kath felt a cold sensation he did not understand. He dismissed the crowd and returned to his quarters. That night, he sent a message to the council requesting reinforcements. Situation stable but unusual. Humans show unexpected psychological resilience. Recommend additional troops for security. The council denied the request. These were only regulars. Farmers and teachers. No threat. Kath was being paranoid. In the village, the people buried Dohan behind the temple. No Valori were present. Jinho spoke a few words. Yuna led the children in a song. Taiho stood silently, his hands in his pockets. After the burial, people did not go home. They gathered in small groups. They talked in low voices. Decisions were made without being spoken aloud. Everyone knew what had to happen. Everyone agreed. Jinho visited Dohan's widow that night. He brought her food from his own small supply. He sat with her in silence for an hour. Before he left, He said one thing: "We will not forget." She nodded. She understood. Hannah ran farther the next morning. 45 kilometers. She found 3 new paths through the mountains, paths too narrow for vehicles. She memorized them perfectly. Yuna called a secret meeting in the basement of the old temple. 30 people came. They did not write anything down. They did not use any technology. They simply talked and remembered. Taeho walked through the Valori camp that night, checking on repairs. He noted which guards slept at their posts, which doors were left unlocked, which vehicles had fuel and which were empty. Commander Keth slept peacefully, believing he had broken the village spirit with the execution. He was wrong. He had united them. The regulars were no longer just surviving. They were preparing. Every day, they watched and learned. Every night, they planned and remembered. They moved slowly, carefully, leaving no trace. The Valori saw obedient workers, broken spirits, defeated people. They did not see the quiet fire burning in every heart. They did not see the networks growing. They did not see the knowledge being gathered, shared, and stored in human minds where no scanner could find it. The occupation continued. But underneath, like roots spreading through soil, something was growing. Something the Valori would never see coming. Something patient. Something enduring. Something human. 3 months into the occupation, the resistance ignited. But it did not look like resistance. It looked like accidents. Vehicles stopped working. Communication systems failed. Supply lines broke down. Soldiers got lost in the mountains and did not return. Commander Keth investigated each incident. He found no evidence of sabotage. The vehicles had worn parts. The systems had natural failures. The soldiers had simply walked off cliffs in the dark. It was all very unfortunate. Very coincidental. Keth started to feel something new. Fear. Hana's runners were the first weapon. She organized the young people of the village into a group. They called themselves the Postmen. Their job was simple: carry messages. No radios, no technology, just human memory. A runner would memorize a message, then run to another village 20 kilometers away. They would speak the message to someone there, who would speak it to a runner going to the next village. Within hours, information could travel 200 kilometers without leaving any trace. The Valori intercepted no communications because there were no communications to intercept. Just young people running through the hills, apparently exercising. When Valori soldiers tried to follow the runners, they collapsed after 6 kilometers. The postman kept going. One soldier reported this to Keth. "Sir, the humans run without stopping. We cannot pursue." Keth remembered what he had read about persistent predators. Humans could run until their prey died of exhaustion. Their ancestors had done this for millions of years. Now they were doing it again. Jinho's weapon was subtler. He worked with the other farmers to contaminate the grain shipments. Not with poison, nothing so obvious. They simply mixed in plants that would cause slow sickness, stomach pain, weakness, confusion. The Valori ate the grain. Days later, they became sluggish and tired. Their performance dropped. Their reaction times slowed. When the Valori doctors tested the grain, they found nothing unusual. The plants were native to Earth, harmless to humans, but deadly over time to Valori biology. Jinho had learned this from Minho. The doctor had studied Valori physiology carefully, asking helpful questions during his required medical visits to the camp. When accused, Jinho's defense was simple. "The soil here is poor. We warned you the harvest would be weak. Perhaps your species cannot digest our food properly." The Valori had no way to prove otherwise. Yuna's weapon was the children. Every child in the province had become an intelligence operative. They played in the streets, watching everything. They counted soldiers. They noted patrol times. They mapped supply routes. Their game of counting became a perfect surveillance network. When a patrol changed its route, a child noticed and told. Another child, who told another, until the information reached Yuna within minutes. She organized all this information in her head. No notes. No records. Just memory. Patterns emerged. Weaknesses appeared. Opportunities became clear. The Valori never suspected the children. How could they? Children were small and harmless. They just played games. Taiho's weapon was invisible. He continued fixing Valori equipment. He was helpful, efficient, essential, and every repair he made contained a small flaw, a wire placed slightly wrong, a connection that would fail under stress, a part that would break at exactly the wrong moment. Nothing failed immediately. That would be suspicious. But over time, everything wore down faster than it should. Vehicles died at critical moments. Weapons jammed when needed. Communication arrays went silent during emergencies. The Valori blamed cheap materials. Bad luck. Luck. Manufacturing defects. They never blamed the helpful old man who fixed everything with a kind smile. Far away, High Arbiter Vaughn finally reviewed the classified reports from Earth. He had been busy with other matters. Rebellions on 3 worlds. Trade disputes with rival empires. Earth was supposed to be a minor operation. Routine. But the reports troubled him. He read about the farmer who worked 20 hours without rest. The teacher who organized networks without technology. The runner who covered distances that seemed impossible. The old man who understood machines better than engineers. VONN pulled up the Unity's biological database on humans. He read for hours. His crystalline body glowed brighter with each new piece of information. Then he understood. He called an emergency session of the council. The 12 rulers gathered, confused and annoyed. Earth is not under control, Vaughn said. We have made a terrible mistake. The council scoffed. Earth had no army, no weapons, no technology that threatened the Unity. Vaughn shook his head. We prepared for their warriors. We should have feared their farmers. He displayed data on the chamber walls. Human biology, human history, human psychology. They are persistence predators, he said. They can chase prey until it collapses from exhaustion. They do not stop. They can survive on minimal food for months. Their bodies adapt. They become more efficient, not weaker. They can tolerate temperature ranges that kill most species. Cold that freezes metal. Heat that boils water. They survive. They recognize patterns with terrifying speed. Show them a system, and they will find its weakness. Every time. They coordinate without technology. They use memory, trust, and oral tradition. Networks we cannot detect or disrupt. And they have spite. Vaughn paused. Spite is the willingness to harm yourself to harm your enemy. No rational cost-benefit analysis applies. They will burn their own fields to deny you harvest. They will destroy their own infrastructure to trap your soldiers. They will die fighting if it means you die too. The council was silent. We classified humans into categories, Vaughn continued. Soldiers, scientists, leaders, we watched the dangerous ones. But we ignored the regulars. The farmers and teachers and workers. He displayed an image of the village. The rice fields. The simple houses. The ordinary people. These regulars have survived ice ages. They have survived plagues that killed half their population. They have survived wars that burned their cities to ash. They have survived because they endure, because they adapt, because they never stop. And now they are resisting us, slowly, quietly, without leaving any evidence. They are watching us, learning our weaknesses, and preparing. And we did not see it because we thought they were too ordinary to be dangerous. Vaughn looked at the council with ancient eyes. There are 8 billion of them, and we cannot stop what we cannot see. The council voted immediately. Reinforcements were approved. 200 elite shock troops. The finest soldiers in the Unity. Commander Keth received the news with relief. Finally, he would have the force to crush any resistance. He did not understand that it was already too late. That night, in the village, Yuna gathered the leaders. Jinho, Taiho, Hana, Minho, and 40 others. They sat in darkness in the basement of the old temple. "They are sending more soldiers," Yuna said. 200. They arrive in 3 days. No one spoke. The weight of those words hung in the air. Then Jinho stood. He was thin from months of starvation. His hands were rough from endless labor, but his voice was steady. "Then we have 3 days to prepare." Taiho nodded. "I know their machines. I know where they break." Hannah stretched her legs. "I know the mountains, every path, every hiding place." Minho opened his bag. Inside were bottles of medicine. Supplies stolen over months, one at a time. Yuna looked at them all. Farmers, teachers, workers, old people, young people. No soldiers among them. No weapons. No training. Just humans. "They think we are regulars," she said. "They think we are harmless. They think we are weak." She smiled, and it was not a kind smile. "They are wrong." The reinforcement ships arrived on a clear morning. 200 elite Valori shock troops marched through the village in perfect formation. Their armor was black and polished. Their weapons hummed with deadly energy. They moved like a single creature, precise and cold. Commander Keth stood tall as he reviewed his new forces. Finally, he had the strength to crush any resistance. Finally, he would show these humans what the Unity truly meant. He called a meeting with his officers that night. Tomorrow, he announced, they would begin a full crackdown. Every home would be searched. Every suspected rebel would be arrested. Anyone who resisted would be executed on the spot. The villagers would learn fear. Real fear. But the villagers already knew what was coming. Yuna had learned the plan from the children who played near the command post. Within an hour, every family in the village knew. Within 2 hours, the evacuation had begun. It was silent. No running. No shouting. Just people walking calmly into the night, carrying small bundles, following paths they had memorized months ago. The children went first, led by teachers into the mountains. Then the elderly. Then everyone else. Hana's runners guided them through the darkness. They knew every trail, every safe spot, every cave where people could hide. 50 kilometers from the village, deep in the mountains, hidden valleys waited. The villagers had been preparing these shelters for weeks. By morning, the village was empty. Not abandoned in chaos, but organized and orderly. Homes were locked. Animals were released to fend for themselves. Everything valuable was hidden or destroyed. When the Valori began their crackdown at dawn, they found nothing. Commander Keth was furious. He ordered his troops into the mountains to hunt the humans down. They would not escape, but the mountains were not Valori territory. Hannah had chosen the paths carefully. She led the Valori patrols through narrow valleys and steep cliffs. She showed them trails that looked solid, but were not. She walked where the ground was stable. They walked where it crumbled. By noon, 40 soldiers had fallen into ravines or been separated from their units. Their communication equipment failed one by one. Taiho's sabotage, dormant for months, activated in the stress of the chase. The remaining soldiers kept pursuing. They were elite troops. They would not be stopped by terrain. But the humans kept moving. The Valori could run for 2 kilometers. The humans ran for 20. Whenever the soldiers got close, the villagers simply walked faster, farther, deeper into the mountains. The Valori collapsed from exhaustion. The humans kept going. It was persistence hunting in reverse. The predators had become the prey. Back in the village, Jinho waited with a small group of volunteers. They had chosen to stay behind. not to fight with weapons. They had no weapons. But they had something else. They had the land. When Commander Keth realized his troops were failing in the mountains, he called them back. He would regroup and try again. But as his forces retreated to the village, they found the rice paddies flooded. The irrigation system had been activated. The fields were now waist-deep in water and mud. Jinho knew these fields. He had walked them for 30 years. He knew where the ground was solid, where it would support weight, where it would swallow you whole. The Valori did not know. Commander Keth led his troops personally into the paddies. He would find the humans and kill them himself. He waded through the mud, his soldiers behind him, searching for any sign of the enemy. Jinho watched from the tree line. He waited until Keth was deep in the field, far from solid ground. Then he walked out of the shadows. Keth saw him. He raised his weapon. "Stop," Keth commanded. "You are under arrest." Jinho kept walking. His feet found solid ground with every step. He moved through the paddy like a ghost, never sinking, never slowing. "Stop, or I will shoot." Jinho kept walking. He came closer. 20 meters. 10. 5. Keth fired. The shot went wide. His feet were sinking. The mud was pulling him down. He could not aim properly. Jinho reached him. In the command post. The remaining Valori officers heard strange sounds from the paddies. Screaming. Splashing. Then, silence. Taiho walked into the command post an hour later. He was alone. The officers pointed weapons at him. "What are you doing here, old man?" Taiho smiled. "I came to fix something." He held up a small device. It was made from parts he had collected over months. Wires from Valori machines. Metal from broken equipment. A power source stolen piece by piece. "You taught me how your technology works," he said. "I learned well." He pressed a button. The command post exploded. Days later, a Galactic Unity investigation team arrived on Earth. They found a destroyed camp. Missing troops. Empty villages. The local humans were helpful. They guided the investigators through the countryside. They answered every question politely. They had no idea what had happened to the occupation force. So strange. So unfortunate. The investigators found no evidence of resistance. No weapons. No organization. Just farmers and teachers and workers who seemed confused by all the fuss. High Arbiter Vaughn reviewed the final report in his chamber. The occupation force had been annihilated. 200 elite troops. 300 regular soldiers. Commander Keth, all gone. Destroyed by farmers, teachers, clerks, and retirees. Vaughn stood before the council one last time. His crystalline body was dim. His voice was heavy. "We classified humans into threat categories," he said. "Soldiers, scientists, leaders. We watched the dangerous ones. We ignored the rest." He displayed images of the village, the rice fields, the ordinary people going about their ordinary lives. These regulars destroyed an occupation force without weapons, without technology, without armies. They used endurance, patience, memory, and spite. They will harm themselves to harm us. They will burn their own harvest to starve us. They will die fighting if it means we die too. There is no rational way to combat this. No strategy that works against enemies who do not value their own survival above victory. Vaughn looked at the council with ancient, tired eyes. "I recommend full withdrawal from Earth. Immediate, unconditional, and I recommend we never return. There are 8 billion of these creatures. 8 billion farmers and teachers and workers who can work 20 hours without rest. Run distances we cannot imagine. Survive on nothing, remember everything. And coordinate without any technology we can detect. 8 billion regulars. We cannot win this war. We were never even close. The council voted unanimously. Earth was removed from all Unity records. All expeditions were forbidden. Humanity was classified as a species to avoid at all costs in the village. Life returned to normal slowly. The survivors came down from the mountains. The fields were replanted. Children went back to school. Shops reopened. Jinho stood in his rice paddy one morning, watching the sunrise. His daughter Soman brought him tea. She was 30 now, taller, quieter. She had seen things no child should see. "Dad," she said, "will the aliens come back?" Jinho looked at the sky. It was blue and empty. Then he looked at the ground beneath his feet. The soil his father had worked, and his grandfather, and all the generations before. He thought about what they had done. Farmers who became soldiers, teachers who became spies, old men who became saboteurs, ordinary people who had faced an impossible enemy and won, not with weapons, not with armies, but with patience, endurance, memory, and a simple, stubborn refusal to quit. He looked at his daughter and smiled. "They can try." Soman nodded. She understood. The villagers buried their dead behind the temple. Dohon, Taiho, 37, others who had given their lives. No monuments were built. No speeches were made. Just simple graves and quiet memories. But every child in the village knew their names. Every child knew their stories. And every child remembered. Somewhere in the galaxy, Arbiter Vaughn wrote one final entry in his personal log before retiring. Humanity is not a threat because of their soldiers or their scientists or their leaders. Humanity is a threat because every single one of them, even the smallest and weakest, carries the same capacity within them. The capacity to endure, to adapt, to resist, to survive. We made a mistake. We looked at their regulars and saw nothing dangerous. We should have looked closer. We should have seen what they really were, survivors. The log ended. The file was sealed. And across the galaxy, word spread quietly among the stars. Do not go to Earth. Do not challenge the humans. Do not underestimate the regulars. They are the most dangerous creatures in the universe, not because of what they can do, but because of what they can endure.